I'll come on to the urgent question on the future of Scunthorpe Steelworks, and I call Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Secretary of State for Business to make a statement on the future of Scunthorpe Steelworks?
Minister Soda.
Firstly, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think my thoughts and the thoughts of all this House today will be with British Steel's workers and their families following the company's announcement of plans to close the blast furnaces and other steelmaking assets at Scunthorpe and its commercial decision to consult on redundancies. This is not what we wanted, and I know how worrying this will be for all those involved. I'm grateful to my right honourable friend, the member for Scunthorpe, who is in his constituency today, engaging directly with his local community. In the immediate term, we must support the people who work at British Steel. Our contingency plans have kicked in to ensure all possible support is made available to British Steel's workforce. Both the DWP and the DFE will have teams on the ground shortly to engage with employees for as long as necessary. Indeed, we have asked British Steel that officials are given direct access to British Steel's sites to bring their support as close as possible to affected workers. This government inherited a steel sector in crisis, and resolving the long-standing uncertainty around the future of Scunthorpe has been a priority from our first days in office. That is why, when we committed up to £2.5 billion of investment to support our steel industry, we earmarked substantial funding to support British Steel, in addition to the funding allocated to our new and improved deal with Tata Steel. Madam Deputy Speaker, I can confirm today that we have taken another significant step forward. On Monday, my right honourable friend, the Business and Trade Secretary, made a generous conditional offer of financial support to British Steel, an offer designed to deliver a sustainable future for the workforce, industry and local communities. In light of the challenging fiscal context, this speaks volumes about our commitment to the steel industry. This offer follows months of intensive engagement with British Steel to reach a deal that meets our public accountability and legal requirements, works for local people and UK taxpayers, and safeguards as many jobs as possible and ensures the company's long-term commercial viability. The offer we have made is conditional on British Steel meeting these key tests, which is consistent with our approach to similar investment deals. The company must provide the commitments we need and which taxpayers would quite rightly expect in exchange for substantial public funding. It is regrettable that they have not yet done so or accepted our offer. Therefore, I call on the company to reconsider their plans to announce early closures, accept our conditions and accept our generous offer, which remains on the table. I want to assure the House that we are working tirelessly to find a solution. We believe there is a bright future for steelmaking in the UK, and we call on British Steel to work in partnership with a government that cares deeply about the steel sector, to put the business on a sustainable footing for the future and an end to the years of uncertainty at Scunthorpe. Thank you.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her statement and also for the updates that she's provided to me over recent weeks. As she said, there will be increased anxiety amongst the workforce today, and we look to the government to provide maximum support for them. Just for the sake of clarity, can the Minister confirm that the government do wish to maintain the blast furnace production until an alternative arc furnace installation it was up and running? And can she confirm also that they want to maintain production to meet the demands of the defence sector, particularly in view of the increased spending recently announced? Also, she will be aware of the projects that North Lincolnshire Council have put forward, such as their Green Growth Zone and projects within the artificial intelligence sector. Can she confirm she will give support to those? And also, she's aware of other projects in the region that are looking for government support. Can she confirm that she will look sympathetically on those? And also, although I wouldn't want to advocate this particularly as a last resort, will the government consider nationalisation of the industry?
Minister Jones.
Can I thank the honourable gentleman for the manner in which he is representing his constituents here today and in which we have engaged previously. I can confirm on that point of clarity that we would rather the blast furnaces remained open. The honourable gentleman knows that if you close them before securing a supply of steel, that is a very significant thing to do and quite hard in terms of customer confidence and what will happen to that customer base. I can also confirm, I mean, on his point about defence, you know, there was, as we were talking in the Select Committee yesterday, there is a reason why the Russians bombed the blast furnaces in Ukraine first. You need your steel-making capacity, not just for defence itself, but for building the structures that we need in the country, construction and all of that. So he's absolutely right on that front. I met with the council this morning and talked about the plans for us to work together, both on British Steel itself, but also the wider question of what else can we do in the region and how can government support that. And there is a small ministerial team that has been coming together and thinking about these things as possibilities as well. And on his final point, you know, as he knows, the amount of money that we are talking about to develop new infrastructure is very significant. Our preferred approach by far is that British Steel come back to the table with us, talk about the offer on the table, and that we have that private sector investment in the future. But of course, we're looking at all options.
Mr. Chair, Liam Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the Minister's very explicit ambition to retain on these islands primary steel-making capability? That is something that I hope the whole House will row in with. I also welcome the £2.5 billion the government has earmarked for investment in this sector. But can the Minister put a rocket up the Trade Remedy Authority? We have heard very clearly from steelmakers that they need the same safeguards against diverted Chinese steel flooding into our markets that are going to click into place in Europe in April. It's not acceptable that we have to wait till the summer until we safeguard our markets in the same way. They need to act, and they need to act now.
Can I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman and my Right Honourable friend for his question and for his contribution through the Select Committee as well that we had yesterday. The TRA yesterday announced it's going to widen its review of UK steel defences and has accepted the challenge from UK Steel to do just that and is acting. And of course the Trade Secretary and others in the Secretary of State will be looking to make sure our steel defences are as strong as they need to be. The news today about Scunthorpe sits alongside the wider issues about tariffs and the global trade of steel. We need to make sure we're helping in that space too.
Shadow Minister Greg Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The news from Scunthorpe is deeply concerning. Jobs are at risk, and our thoughts are with all of those who now face uncertainty. The world is becoming more dangerous, and we need to bolster our defence industry. Without the ability to produce our own primary steel, those efforts could be put in jeopardy. So my first question is what impact the Minister believes the news will have on Britain's defence industry, and what impact she believes closure would have on our national security. Madam Deputy Speaker, it takes a special something to be able to offer someone £500 million and for them to reject it. But whatever it is, I guess the Business Secretary has it. Whenever Labour negotiates, Britain loses. Whether with Mauritius, AstraZeneca, now British Steel, the government are confirming it. And so far, at least, that appears to be the case with the United States. The government pretends as if tariffs on steel are inevitable, which, as we showed in government, is simply not the case. Therefore, can the Minister update the House on United States trade negotiations, in particular in relation to steel? And can the Minister confirm that the Business Secretary has engaged further with Jingyi since they rejected him? But, Madam Deputy Speaker, tariffs are just one challenge facing the industry. Alongside the jobs tax and the unemployment bill, the steel industry is being choked by the government's ideological green targets. So can the Minister tell the House what concerns British Steel have expressed about those net zero targets? And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, as I said at the beginning, this news will be deeply concerning for steel workers in Scunthorpe. Has the Minister or the Secretary of State spoken with them about this news? And if so, what support are they being offered?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do not want to insult this House by suggesting there was any kind of deal on the table under the previous government and that anything happened on steel other than a halving of production over the last decade. A halving, Madam Deputy Speaker. Lots of things shut down and closed during that period, not just in the steel industry, but in many others. I'm looking at my honourable friend, the member for Redcar, for proof of that. Whether it's steel, whether it's shipbuilding, whether it's the automotive sector, we inherited a situation where the previous government had neglected or kicked the can down the road for major decisions that hadn't been taken, and all we inherited were a series of industrial crises which we are now trying to solve. We delivered a better deal with Port Talbot than had been negotiated under the previous government, and we are still in talks with British Steel, and we are hoping that we can come to a resolution, not just because of the very many very highly skilled workers in Scunthorpe who we respect and honour and want to make sure stay in their jobs. So I have nothing more to say on that front from his contribution. In terms of tariffs and the situation with the US, we are in a good position in this country in that the relationship that our Prime Minister has built up with Donald Trump, the President, and his team means that we are in active conversations about a potential trade deal. This is a good positive thing, and we are carrying on having those conversations. My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, has been talking regularly with our American counterparts, as you would expect. We will have cool heads in this space. We will navigate our way through, and we are talking daily with British Steel. Our officials are talking daily with British Steel. We're talking with the trade unions. We're talking with all the players to try and make sure in this difficult landscape globally that we find ourselves in, we are doing right by the people of Scunthorpe.
Lawrence Turner.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to draw the House's attention to my background as an official of the GMB Steelworkers Union. That union supports my constituency party and my membership of that union and Unite. The three steelworkers unions, GMB, Unite and Community, have put forward a multi-union plan for Scunthorpe. Will the Minister meet urgently with those unions, including with cross-governmental officials, in order that we can do everything possible to keep that multi-union plan on the table?
Can I thank my honourable friend for the question, and can I use this opportunity to pay tribute to the trade unions who we have been working with closely, Community, GMB and Unite, and we have been discussing their plan, and as I say, our preference is that British Steel accept the deal that we have given them, the incredibly generous offer of public funding that has been made to them, and we hope that we can find a way forward which involves keeping those blast furnaces open. But of course, as I say, we are looking at every other option, and we certainly have been talking to the trade unions about their suggestions.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. As with the Minister, my thoughts are with the British steel workers and their families following the closure of the Scunthorpe site. It is going to. From electric vehicles to wind turbines, high-quality green steel is an important component of our transition to a low-carbon economy. The government needs to rapidly move from the Conservatives' legacy of a patchwork of last-minute rescues to a genuine long-term approach that is effective for British industry and doesn't harm British workers. What is the government doing to ensure that communities in Teesside and Scunthorpe are supported against job losses? And will the government realise that sitting on our hands and hoping that Trump won't hit us with even more is not a good negotiating strategy? Will the Minister take a stronger approach and bring forward retaliatory measures against Donald Trump's political allies like his co-president Elon Musk and his company Tesla?
I can reassure the honourable gentleman we are not sitting on our hands, and there is a good reason why it would not be right in this place for me to comment on the internal negotiations that are taking place between this government and the United States. Quite rightly, we will keep a cool head in those conversations, and we will make sure we are ultimately doing what is right for our industry and for our people. But we are in a good position in that we are engaged in deep conversations with the US, and will continue to do that. The honourable gentleman asked about the support for local people. There are various stages of this, I think. The starting point is we very much hope that we can come to a deal and that we can negotiate with British Steel, and that they'll accept what we are offering, and we can move forward on that terms. In the short term, the DWP and the Department for Education will be there on the ground, making sure people are getting the immediate support they need. If the consultation continues and there is a closure, of course, then there is much more intervention we need to kick in terms of support for local people, and we're already working on all manner of contingencies to make sure we support people in the same way that we're doing in Port Talbot, but our aim is not to get to that point, absolutely.
Select Committee Member Sonia Kumar.
And Deputy Speaker, the UK now produces less steel than our European neighbours, Germany, Italy, Spain, France, Austria, Poland and Germany. Over the last 30 years, China has seen its share of global production of steel rise from 13% to 54%. In order to safeguard the future industry of steel, we need to think about diversification. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that supporting British SMEs into the steel industry will make it more competitive and more sustainable?
Can I thank my honourable friend for that conversation, and indeed the work that she's been doing in her own constituency with the steel industry there. The steel strategy that we are pulling together, that will be published in the spring, that has £2.5 billion to invest, is looking at how we stimulate demand, how we use R&D, how we get the most out of the scrap we have in the UK, how we look at trade and overcapacity, how we look at carbon leakage, how we look at availability of sites. There is a whole raft of work going on, and she's right that it's the big players to the small that we need to make sure there is an industry for, and that's what we're working through, and I look forward to working with her on that.
Follow the House, everybody.
Scunthorpe is my neighbouring constituency, and many of my constituents work there will be desperately worried today. But this is a vital national interest, a crisis. For the last 150 years, wars have been won by people, states who can make virgin steel. So will the government do anything? Tariffs, the Secretary of State going up there now to Scunthorpe, negotiating directly with the company to ensure that we keep our vital national interest going, which means blast furnaces.
The Secretary of State is, as the honourable gentleman would expect, talking to and has been talking to Jingye. I have, officials have, and that those negotiations will continue to happen. The site at Scunthorpe produces a lot of different types of steel. As the honourable gentleman will know, it provides 95% of all the steel that we use in Network Rail, and I think it's it's incredibly important in that sense, and he's right to draw attention to that. There are many different ways of making steel, and we are investigating on the primary steel point. We are investigating the merits of investing in DRI, which is where you use hydrogen instead of the kind of old blast furnaces. The reality of the Scunthorpe blast furnaces is very old infrastructure, decades old, and needs updating, and we need to move to new technology, and that's what we're trying to do with Jingye.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
clearly, in the absence of an industrial strategy in the last 5 years, has had an impact. So I welcome the government's notion of a steel plan. Given the industrial strategy features 3 major elements such as construction, defence and energy infrastructure, can I ask my honourable friend that with the steel plan that we look at not just a 10-year horizon but one of, say, 25 to 30 years to ensure we get the investment that we absolutely need to ensure we have virgin steel production here in the UK, like all the other 19 countries in the G20.
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question and for his expertise on this as a member of the Select Committee as well. We had this debate yesterday, and I think, yes, having a long view has to be the right thing to do. And in terms of how this government spends £2.5 billion of taxpayers' money, we have to make sure we're spending it in the right way and in a way that secures the industry well into the future.
Select Committee Member John Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise as the grandson of a steelworker in Corby, Northamptonshire, so I understand something of the iconic nature of this industry, but the Right Honourable Lady tries to blame us for what went wrong. Is the situation not so confused now that the government is not sending the right signals to the industry? We're not sure what we want. We already do not make the right kinds of steel for much of the defence industry. The steel strategy, wonderful, in the spring. When is the spring? Is it not the case that the government needs to get a grip, send out signals now, and if we are going to negotiate with the Chinese over the Scunthorpe mill and the amount of money that we're spending there, should we not have some kind of golden share so that taxpayers have some comfort about what's going on there?
I can assure the honourable gentleman that I very much have a grip, and this is something that we are working with officials and with the Secretary of State and others all the time. We are, in terms of the conditions that he suggests we should put on the offer of funding, of course the offer that we made was conditional on things like job targets, fair terms for workers, adhering to UK law, protecting taxpayers' money. There was a whole raft of conditions that obviously were set and that would need to be adhered to. In terms of his haste, I mean, there hasn't been a steel strategy for the 14 years of the last government. We are developing one. I am not going to stand in front of taxpayers in my constituency and say I've spent £2.5 billion just on a whim. We have to get this right. We are working with industry. I was in Celsa in Cardiff this week with a roundtable of the scrap industry and the steelmakers, talking about the plan. I've done roundtables with all of the industry who buy steel, trying to make sure we're understanding what demand is going to be over the coming years. We are getting this right, and I think that is what the taxpayers would expect us to do.
Picture.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I know my right honourable friend, the member of Scunthorpe, is in Scunthorpe right now supporting our fantastic steel workers. Many of my constituents in Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme work in Scunthorpe, and I know that they will be extremely anxious right now, and my heart goes out to them. Can the Secretary of State confirm that she remains absolutely steel determined to secure the future of the UK construction steel industry, and will do everything she possibly can to support my constituents who work in that place?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question, and of course his constituents who work for British Steel will be deeply worried. I have I was last there in February and talked to workers there, talked to the unions there as well as the management, and this is a proud industry of good jobs in terms of the salaries that compared to the local averages, and I am very well aware of how anxious they will be feeling, and I want them to at least take some comfort from the fact that we are doing absolutely everything we can to secure a deal with British Steel.
Again.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it's difficult to listen to the Minister at the dispatch box saying everything's okay with the United States because of the positive relationship between the Prime Minister and the President, which can be characterised as the President says jump and the Prime Minister says how high, because the US have visited precisely the same tariffs on the UK steel industry as they have on the Chinese. So if that's a special relationship, I would hate to see what an ordinary relationship looks like. When will the government get a grip on this issue on production of primary steel? It's non-negotiable for a G7 nation to produce primary steel. It's intrinsic to our of Defence and Security. And the government, it seems to be trying to negotiate us at the worst of all worlds, where the taxpayer has to stump up the money, but the private sector in China gets to dictate the terms.
Yeah. I don't recognise that framing at all. We are in a better position than many other countries in terms of the strength of our relationship with the US and the building up of relationships that has happened over recent months. And as I said, the Secretary of State is in talks with his counterparts regularly. We are having constructive talks with our counterparts, and we can't go into details of that negotiation, and all I can assure the honourable gentleman in the House is that we have a cool head, we know what we want, and we will do what's best for our industries in the long run. On the matter of primary steel and of steel making in the UK, we need for our defence and our security to have a strong, vibrant steel making production in the UK. There are different ways to do that. There are different technologies. The technologies are moving all the time, and that's why the steel strategy needs to anticipate where technology is going and make sure we get it right.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think the Minister is speaking with a few mixed messages, for me to say that. The reality is that they're sending support people to counsel the people who may be out of a job and making an offer to the firm that will actually providing those jobs to try and cushion the blow. Now, the sad reality is, as has been said, if those blast furnaces close down, they won't be recoverable. So the first thing that has to happen is to make sure that they're not closed down. Because the consequences of that is the steel industry goes into steep decline, we have more people unemployed, and then we have to import steel from China at a much more expensive cost. So why won't we actually give a guarantee that those blast furnaces will not close down?
I'm sure the honourable gentleman knows that this is a private company that will make decisions of its own choice, and we are operating within that environment. We have put an offer on the table which is about the development and the redevelopment of Scunthorpe, the creation of an electric arc furnace and the transition for that. It is not. It is an offer that is still on the table. It's an offer we're still talking to them about. The reason we're there on the ground now is because the company has decided to launch a consultation on redundancies, and it's right and proper that we're there to provide support to workers.
Higher.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I commend the hard graft got in by the Minister and the Secretary of State to secure a deal in the interests of my steelworkers in Teesside and those in Scunthorpe as well. It's deeply concerning that Jingye have chosen to reject this generous offer that was on the table. I'm sure I stand with steel members across the House in urging Jingye to come back to the table and secure that deal. But will the Minister reaffirm that all options remain open, including strong national intervention to protect our steel industry in the future and make sure that British steel is made here in Britain?
Well, I know my honourable friend is working hard on behalf of his constituents, and I've appreciated being able to talk to him about this in the run-up to this happening. And of course, I can reassure him that this government wants to deliver a vibrant steel industry in the UK, that we are very well aware of the importance of British Steel and the Scunthorpe site and associated sites as well, and we are doing all we can to make sure we keep that operation going.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We all know that steel is a critical national industry, in particular the ability to make primary steel. The Chinese might be giving up on British steel, but the British people do not want to give up on British steel, and nor should we allow the final 2 blast furnaces to close. So can I urge the Minister, take this not as a negative, but it's an opportunity to be positive. So take British steel into public ownership and create a long-term, 20 to 30-year positive plan to invest in steelmaking for British industry and for our defence industry.
We are very much through our plan for steel and the £2.5 billion that we have to invest in the steel industry, aiming to do exactly that, to keep the industry going. I would invite the honourable gentleman to go and see some of the other sites around the country where we have electric arc furnaces in operation as well, because they're not that different from blast furnaces. They're still, massive buildings melting and making the steel, and but in a much more efficient way. The problem we have with Scunthorpe is that the blast furnaces are very old and they will need huge amounts of money spent on them. And of course, British Steel are losing £700,000 a day on Scunthorpe. But look, this isn't about ideology or particular political beliefs. This is about economics and making sure we protect our country and provide the defences that we need and make sure we are as secure as we possibly can be in a changing world. So on that, I agree with you.
Eric Twigg.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank my honourable friend for the statement? Of course, I know she's doing all she can on this issue. It is clear we cannot have a defence industrial strategy unless we have our own primary steel making facilities. Clearly, we can't let these furnaces close. I was interested to hear what the Minister said about having various meetings amongst Whitehall and with the Treasury. Therefore, can she tell me when she's likely to be able to come back to the House and report about what progress has been made in terms of dealing with this issue now, but also, and a more important one in the longer term, is a long-term steel strategy, not just over 5 or 10 years, but 20 years or more?
Well, I can reassure my honourable friend that the Treasury are completely committed to having a plan for steel. We talked with the Chancellor in opposition a lot about this, just as we have in government, and the very generous offer that was put on the table to British Steel was signed off, as is quite right, by the Chancellor and by the Prime Minister, and they're both committed to this. We are coming back in the spring with the steel plan, where we will set out how we will spend the rest of the fund that we have. In the meantime, I again would urge British Steel to come back and talk about the offer that is on the table and see if we can come to a deal.
Andrew Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given the geopolitical uncertainty ushered in by the new American administration and America and China's attitude to net zero, will the Minister assure the House that in making decisions on the future of critical national infrastructure that touches upon the defence of this country, such as the extraction of shale gas and the continuance of blast furnaces producing virgin steel, she will be very, very careful about doing anything that would reduce this country's capability of standing on its own 2 feet?
Yeah. I will certainly make sure we don't do anything that reduces our ability to stand on our own 2 feet. I can give him that assurance.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank the Minister for her comments on the National Steel Strategy and for agreeing to meet the owners of Union Electric Steel in my constituency. But does she agree with me that continuing to be able to produce cast steel rolls in the UK is an essential part of the steel strategy which will benefit Scunthorpe, Port Talbot and other communities?
Can I thank my honourable friend? I'm very much looking forward to the meeting with his constituents, who are a very important part of the steel chain. Of course, there are many different products that we make, very many different assets that we have in the UK that we need to protect beyond the big 6 steel companies. So I think he makes a very important point.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's now clear that domestic virgin steel production is a national security imperative. Acting on it isn't acting on a whim. Can the Minister respond to her colleagues behind her and on this side of the House in recognising that it's a national security imperative? Therefore, whether it's nationalisation, golden shares, the other issues being put over, if it's a national security imperative, we must act. Regardless of technology, we must act. Can the Minister please tell the House that she agrees with that?
Madam Deputy Speaker, you will recognise these conversations that we are having from your position when you were the Minister, and indeed the newfound enthusiasm for virgin steelmaking that the opposition have that they didn't have in government at all.
we will make sure we're doing the right thing. There are some important points. We do not have time at this point to go into this conversation. I'm very happy to have it with the honourable gentleman. There are some important points to make here. We make a lot of our steel for defence, not from primary steel. We make a lot of it from electric arc furnaces. It's about getting the right mix, and that is what we will make sure we do.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answer to the UQ. Last week I visited British Offsite, who's a CEO actually housed in my constituency in Harlow, about the innovative house building they're doing and techniques that do require a lot of steel, although I have to say use it very efficiently. Can I ask the Minister what meetings she has had with house builders, as well as rightly said the defence sector, as part of the government's steel strategy?
Can I thank my honourable friend for the question? I meet with the house builders regularly. I've got some meetings with them today. And of course, the production of steel and the recycling of steel is really important in construction, as is some of the offtakes from steel, which you can then use to make cement. And again, the recycling we can do on that front as well. So we need a lot of steel to build the 1.5 million homes that we want to build as a government. So we need to make sure the steel industry is strong.
Final question, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Minister, I thank the Minister first of all for her answers to the questions, and we all share the frustration that the Minister has and we all have about the process at this moment in time. The news that the government's offer of funding to retain jobs in Scunthorpe is to be rejected certainly outlines the difficulties in having British businesses no longer owned by those who have an interest in British jobs. But my thoughts are with the workers who are sitting today looking at their children and their mortgage repayments and are wondering just how they can make it all work out when all they want to do is work. So how can government and the Minister give confidence to those workers in Scunthorpe and indeed these industries throughout the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland who rely on that steel to know that a way forward can be found for them? Thank you.
My honourable friend is absolutely right to talk about how we can give comfort in what is a very difficult time, and we're not shying away from that at all. The immediate support that we will provide through DWP and the Department of Education is important. If it comes to closure, then there will be a big transition board that will make sure we're supporting people as much as possible. They're getting skills, they're getting training, of course, as he would expect. But you know, the comfort we can give to people now is we are trying as hard as we can to make sure this doesn't happen.
That is the end of the urgent question. I'll give the front benches a few moments to shuffle over.